Okay, today we're going to talk about Chapter 10, which deals with some of the relationship challenges that you might face. And I believe we've talked about expectancies and what happens when your expectancies within a relationship are violated. And you can have either socially based relationships or socially based expectations, rather. Which are the expectations that are culturally based? You expect people to be polite to each other, etc. Or they can be relationship specific. For example, you and your best friend always hang out together on Friday night, and that's just become to be an expectancy, and you just assume that she will be hanging out with you this particular Friday night. And they also differ based on severity. So missing one Friday night, spending a Friday night with another friend might be severe or it might be minor depending on the relationship. Okay. When there's a relationship failure or any other type of problem with a challenge with a relationship, we can respond in different ways. We have different defense mechanisms, and these can range from either trying to appear invulnerable or stonewalling, refusing to talk about a problem. So Chapter 10 deals with some of the different ways in which you can deal with these, and you need to pay attention. You need to be familiar with these 4 tests. Okay, one way that we can deal with relationship violations of expectancy is through reproaches. And reproaches, as your textbook tells you, can be either mitigating, in other words, you can try to correct the situation, or they can be hostile and abusive. So in other words, if you're working on a project with someone, and that person isn't pulling her share of the burden, you could say something like, well, remind me never to work with you on a project again because I now know it will never get done. Or you could say something like, well, have you finished that yet? Or what can I do? We're running late. What can I do to help you? So things that will actually correct the situation. Okay. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is very important in a relationship, whether it's a relationship with a classmate you're working on a project with, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, whatever. So when forgiveness is necessary, both parties have to acknowledge that there's been a failure, that someone someone violated expectancies. Manage your emotions. Try to keep anger in check or disappointment in check. Try to understand and empathize with the other person. If you need to seek forgiveness, if you need to grant forgiveness, and negotiate the situation. So that's the important thing. The key thing. Stonewalling, you need to remember that term. Stonewalling is a major, if not the major, cause for divorce. Stonewalling is just a refusal to talk about a problem when there is one. You see that in married couples, sometimes frequently when one side or the other just shuts down and refuses to talk. Okay, you also need to understand that not all relationships are welcome. Be familiar with the term stalking, which is intrusive behavior by another person that it can make you fear for your personal safety, or can, if not necessarily violent, can threaten violence. So stalking would be the person who's actually physically following you around or monitoring you, casing you. Obsessive relational intrusion is a person who just becomes a kind of a pest without making you fear for your safety. So obsessive relationship intrusion would be the person who keeps emailing you or keeps texting you, maybe keeps calling you. This person, you're not fearful of this person for your safety, but it's just unwanted, and you just kind of wish the person would go away. So you need to be familiar with those two terms and what happens, be familiar with those two terms and the difference between the terms. Okay, and what happens when a relationship ends? You feel an internal dissatisfaction that prompts you to reflect on the relationship. You discuss it with others. You perhaps make the decision to end the relationship. And so the two of you decide, and then you make this public. So if this is a romantic relationship, you let other people, family members, friends know about it. Okay, and then after the breakup, the term grave dressing. You try to go over the relationship in your mind, find something positive, find something you can take out of it. You reestablish your own individuality, and you move on. You perhaps begin to pursue other relationships. So these are just some of the highlights. Again, this isn't a complete lecture, but these are just some of the highlights that you need to be aware of. Go over the PowerPoint slides carefully, go over the exam review, and read the chapter.